Do you want to improve your portrait photography? Here are 3 quick tips on how you can improve your portrait photography in under 10 minutes. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Tatiana. I am a Dallas-based portrait and wedding photographer. And in this quick video, I'm going to share some quick tips with you on how I was able to improve my portrait photography skills, especially if you're new and you're starting out. I've been doing this for 8 years and I just want to share some things that I have learned along the way so you don't make the same mistakes. Let's get into it. Okay. So the first tip is I recommend getting a portrait lens. There are 3 different portrait lenses, well, technically 4, but there are 3 that most people end up using. There is a 35 millimeter, a 50 millimeter, and a 85 millimeter. The 35 millimeter portrait lens is going to be wider. I used to use that lens a lot as a portrait lens. The only downside to that lens is it does, if you come in too close to your subject, it will kind of warp them out or make them look wider. And I personally don't think it's a good look. I would only use that lens for certain types of portrait photography. For example, if I'm shooting a wedding couple and I want to play around with the veil and I want to kind of get it in front of them or in front of the face, that was a great lens to use just because I was able to come close, hold the veil, and kind of move it around in front of them. That's just a quick example of when I would use the 35 millimeter. Or if I want to take wider shots and I want more scenery with a lower aperture, the 35 millimeter will go down to about a 1.4 aperture, which is great if you want some blur in the background, but get that nice wide shot and some scenery. The next lens that I wanted to talk about was the 50 millimeter. Okay, this one here is a 50 millimeter, a 1.4 lens. This is a great starter lens. It's probably like $400, maybe $500 to purchase. And so if you were to choose only one portrait lens to purchase, I definitely recommend the 50 millimeter to be your very first one. There is also a 50 millimeter 1.2, but it is more expensive. I feel like, unless, I don't even know. It's a lot of money. It's like $1,500, I think, to start out with that lens. I think the difference is it might have better, autofocus. I think it's sharper. It goes down to a lower aperture. But like I said, I love the 50 millimeter 1.4 and I recommend it to anyone that is starting out in portrait photography. Okay, so the next lens I wanted to talk about was the 85 millimeter. This one is a 85 millimeter 1.4 Canon. All of these lenses that I'm talking about are from Canon. This is actually my favorite lens out of all the portrait lenses. But this lens, it's a 85 millimeter, so you do have to stand further out from your subject. I feel like since if you're starting out and you're new, I really don't like to be that far away from my clients, especially when I'm trying to speak to them and guide them. So this one can be challenging. That's why I love using the 50 millimeter for portrait shots. But the reason why I love this lens is, oh my gosh, the bokeh, you guys. If you want very strong bokeh, very strong blur, this lens is just so creamy. It's so beautiful, and I just absolutely love it. So that's the 3 different lenses that I recommend for portraits. Again, like I mentioned before, if you were just going to choose one, if you can only purchase one, I recommend the 50 millimeter. If you can purchase all 3, shoot for all 3 lenses. And lastly, the one thing I wanted to talk about is, let's say you don't have a portrait lens. Let's say you invested in a zoom lens. I think the standard zoom lens is like a 24 to 70, something around that range. I know there's other lenses that range wider and go higher, but the standard 20, let's just say 24 to 70, 2.8. You can still use that lens as a portrait lens, and you can really even manipulate it to where, for example, I'll just share with you guys. Let's say you use the 24-70. You want to bring your aperture down to the lowest possible number that it goes to. So if your lens starts at 4.0, go to 4.0. If your lens starts at 2.8, go to 2.8. And then, because you want to get that blur, right? The whole point of having a portrait lens is to be able to get as much blur in the background as you can. So what I do, if I have a zoom lens, I will go down to 2.8 and I will zoom my lens all the way in to, like, for example, if it stops at 70 millimeter, I'm gonna zoom in all the way to 70. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that my subject is not too close. For example, you see how I'm sitting here at this chair. If I were to get too close to the background, the whole shot would be more sharper. You would see the scenery in the background and the whole image would be sharper. You would see the scenery, including your subject or whatever. So what I usually do is I take my subject and I move him away from the background. I move them closer, I move them just more out. That way I can allow my lens to have more depth of field and to allow the background to just be more blurred out. And that's how I'm able to manipulate my images when I'm using a lens, like a zoom lens. For example, I own a 28-70 Canon. The lowest aperture that lens goes to is a 2.0. I almost always shoot at 2.0 and I get amazing blurry images. I don't even pull out my 85. I don't pull out my 50. I don't pull out my 35. That lens is on my camera the entire time when I'm photographing weddings. Now, it is an expensive lens. It's like $3,000. So if you're able to invest in a lens like that, go for it. But like I said, if you're new, you're starting out, you were to choose one lens, get your camera body and get your 50 millimeter, and that is a great start, an affordable start until you can invest in other lenses. Lighting, okay? You guys, lighting matters. It took me years to master lighting. So for example, let's say you're scheduling a client and you are not sure what time of the day to schedule your people, your portrait, family, whatever it is that you're doing. So what I do is I always schedule my clients about an hour to 2 hours before sunset. That is the best lighting. That is the most warm lighting. And I really try to avoid cloudy days. Maybe a little bit of overcast is okay, but I really try to avoid cloudy days. And here's why. I personally feel that if you're photographing on a cloudy day, you naturally get cooler tones in your raw images. It also does something funky to the face. The light almost doesn't hit right. I noticed that, during weddings, I feel like my clients look a little older than they actually are. And I personally prefer warmer images and raw because I like warmer images overall. It's just, it's not the same if you take a picture on a cloudy day and then you try to warm that image up. I feel like the skin tones just, to me, they don't look right. And I'm very much so about coloring, about the eye. So for example, here's an image that I'm showing you. This is somewhat cloudy and then this is sunny. This was actually taken in the same day. I photographed Lena in the same day. In the first shot, the sun kind of hid behind the clouds, so it was partially cloudy. The second shot, I had the sun right behind her, and I mean, look at her skin tone. It is so beautiful, so natural, so warm. So that is the light that I recommend that you guys shoot in. Now I know some of you are probably gonna come at me in the comments and say, oh, but cloudy days are amazing. Everybody says shoot cloudy. You don't have to worry about the sun. And yes, that is, the case, but there's also downsides to shooting on a cloudy day as well. So, and it also just depends what style you're going for. If you want your images cooler, if you want a moody look to the images, then yes, of course, shoot on cloudy days because that is your style. But I'm just speaking from an overall perspective, I guess. I love the sun. I love warm images. I schedule my clients always a couple hours before. The other thing that I do is the way you position and how you follow the sun. So for example, 2 hours before the session, the sun is still pretty high up. So you don't want the sun directly behind the person in open field. You don't want that. I always take the sun and I block it with something. I block it with a tree, a bush, a building, okay? But I have the sun behind the subject. So this is the effect of what the sun looks like behind the subject. Just be very careful to not let that sun peek through, because this is what's going to happen. You're going to get a bunch of glares, you're going to get a bunch of lens flares, and you don't want that. I don't think it's a good look. And the only time I think lens flares and things like that are a good look is right at the peak of when the sun is coming down. We're talking like 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before. The sun is not as harsh. So those images look very great in an open field or something like that. But anything prior to that, you're going to get a lot of haze. And like I said, it's not a great look. The other thing is make sure that, like, for example, I showed you an example of how I had the client, in front of the sun. Here's what images look like if you put your client at a 90-degree angle. So basically the sun to either the right of them or the left of them directly. Okay, same thing. It's not a very good look. The way the sun hits, the shadows, I'm not a big fan of that. So just keep that in mind. Where you position your subject matters. And I always suggest have the sun behind, blocking it with something, unless you're in an open field and you're right at that 10-minute mark, 5-minute mark before sundown. Then shoot for those shots. Those are beautiful golden hour shots, but you only have a very small window for those. Posing, okay? You can very much so improve your portraits based on how you pose your clients. I feel like posing is everything. How you make them feel, making them feel comfortable is everything. And if you're new or you struggle with posing, that can be very challenging. So this is what I do when it comes to posing. I always make sure I tell my clients or whoever I'm photographing, I always pay attention to their body structure, their hands. So for example, if I tell my client, put your, hands underneath your chin, or kind of do something with the arms, or, move sideways. Sometimes what can happen is your client can give you one of these, like literally like slap on to the face. Or when they put their hands underneath their chin, they're going to do one of these. They're trying to punch somebody. So I always say, like, relax the fingers, just very softly, very angelic, okay? Move. Constant movement is okay. Up, down, looking different directions, very slow moving movements going on, doing different things. I feel like the more you can have your client move, the better. The other thing that you can do to kind of get them comfortable, and you can even do that first, if you're trying to get better still shots, then maybe go for some candid shots. I love having my clients, for example, Lena, she had this beautiful blue dress on. I had her twirling around. I had her walking really, really fast. And I had her constantly moving her dress around, looking different directions. And those photographs turned out beautifully. And then because she got comfortable with all of that movement and just having fun with it, then when we got to more of the still shots with the hand postures, with the posing, she mastered it. So just some little quick tips on how you can improve your posing. And also, when you are focusing on your client, make sure you're always focusing on the eyes, okay? Even if you're shooting further out, always focus on the eye, because that's how you're gonna get the best focus. And if you go slightly off, or you focus on the chest or the body, then the face is going to be a little bit more blurred. So I always say focus on the eye. That's going to give you the best result. The lens that I used for all of these shots that I did with Lena is my 85mm 1.4 lens. My presets that I use on these are actually my own that I created. If you guys are interested in them, they are the classic presets, and you can look in the description below for those presets on my website. And that's it, you guys. These are 3 ways that you can improve your portraits. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you guys do to improve your portrait, or if I missed anything, I would love your input in the comments below. Share with the community, what you guys think. And thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video.